This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Well, under the universal time clock, good morning. And this morning we have Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. That is I who is doing the talking. I am the voice of Respectonomics. And I have with me my co-host, Sarah Benton. Good morning, internationally speaking, globally speaking.
Internationally speaking, across all time
zones. Yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah. We're free to talk now, wherever we may be. And this morning, the topic is called economics or egonomics, which isn't quite the right pronunciation. It should be egonomics.
Right.
That's what we're going to be talking about. But I'm going to start, if I may, Sarah, with the issue of just that one word, economics.
Absolutely.
And before you roll your eyes and before you shuffle,
It's coming.
It's coming. The train is on its way. Here it is, the Greek origin of the word economics. And it's made up of two words, oikos and nemos. And the oikos refers to your house. I think it wasn't you, but somebody said, isn't oikos a make of you?
I was just going to say it's Greek yogurt.
Yeah, no. Would you just please respect the Greek origin? We're having a classical language discussion.
Yeah.
Demosthenes would not appreciate your humor.
I think they would.
I think you would too. That's what bothers me. So we got oikos and nemos, which is actually where the word nemesis comes from, is to manage. So in actual fact, the origin of the word economics is household management. And before we get into that part of it, I want to make one very important statement about the expression economics, because the political world, the orbit, has picked up on economics, and they've all become incredibly knowledgeable. I don't know if you've noticed. And one of the most famous lines from a prospective leader of a prospective nation looked up and said to his opponent, "Oh, that's not how economics works."
Oh.
And I would love to take that individual and, as it were, I would say throttle his intellect, because what he said was untrue. I would say that actually very few people, I'm not sure anybody really understands how economics works in that sense. We can come back to that in a second. But what I want to emphasize, though, is this. Economics deals with transfers. We think in terms of supply and demand. But the transference we're talking about, this is critical. The transference we're talking about is one of values. It's not one of creating wealth. In other words, when you and I go shopping, for example, and you made $100 that morning on some transaction, and you go to the grocery store to get things, that currency, that $100 is surely is your medium of exchange. That's fine. But it's the value of what you see in front of you that determines whether or not you will buy it or ignore it. I mean, when you see, strawberries out of season selling at $10 a quart, you say, no, thank you.
Right.
When you see strawberries in season at 50 cents a quart, you say, I'll take the lot.
Right.
But that's your sense of value. In your world, your human resource world, you talk a lot about value proposition.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, economics is a value proposition. We exchange values. It does not create wealth in and of itself. And that's one of the biggest hijacks that's been taking place improperly by political leaders who talk about economics as a mechanism for creating wealth. The wealth that matters is the values that are underpinning it. So that's the first point. It may sound like a question of definition, but once we understand we're exchanging values and not exchanging or looking at it as a building growth and expansion and so on, we actually are far happier human beings. Number one, it's a much easier way to look at it.
Is it fair to say as well that the value that we place on things are different for different people?
Absolutely. That makes, and one of the most interesting parts of that exchange process is not only different strokes for different folks, but we also have another thing, which is, I don't know if you've had this exact experience, I certainly have, is I will go for months eating ice cream. Vanilla ice cream, by the way.
Okay.
Next time I'm at your house, that's what I would like, please.
That's what you like. Okay, got it.
With maple syrup,
With me. Okay.
but my maple syrup.
I was just going to say it's probably from
Yeah,
your.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But suddenly I stopped eating ice cream. I can't explain it. You can't explain it. But I just come back with that one liner. I don't want it anymore. And economics is very much to do with a stop and start mentality. None of us quite knows why sometimes we consume and sometimes we do not. We ignore. And
It's
you've
like trends. Trends come in, trends go out.
exactly. Well, it's exactly that word trend is very important because it actually correlates with fashion. And fashions do come and go, trends come and go, and we do it in our own selves as well. You only have to look at the seasons and how they change. So it's quite reasonable. I'll change as well. So, but the thing I want to emphasize this, if there's only one calling card out of this podcast and what we need to do with it is this, and that is household management is you and me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a single individual on this planet that can't claim one degree or another of household management. You talk about the relationship you have with your family. You talk about the way your income comes in, your income goes out, your savings go up, your savings go down, your debts go through the roof, and all of those horrible things that can happen or nice things that can happen. But it's all under the heading of household management. And I want you to think about this for a sec. Household management is very, very complex.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a straightforward money comes in and money goes out, all you'd have to do is put a computer on your desk and that would be the end of that.
Right.
You might even call in AI and say, run the show for me. It's the sensitivities, the getting the children to the hockey game, being at a meeting on time, recognizing that your car needs servicing. You think of all of the actual complexities of your day-to-day living. You are an economist. And we need to be all looking in the mirror and saying, I am an economist. I run a very complex operation. It's based on spontaneity. It's based on immediacy. It's based on forethought. It's based on regrets. It's based on a lot of things that all come together. And it's an incredible combination when you think of the mental and the physical and the intellectual that all come together in this one arrangement of managing the household.
The complexities.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important things is to understand this extraordinarily complex arrangement that each and every one of us is responsible for.
Right.
And if I can say that with, which I do, truthfully, I don't say I always do it well, by the way. That's not what I said. But I did say I manage my household. And
Right.
when someone else says, I will manage your household for you,
Mm.
I think there's a bit of me that says, excuse me.
A little
A,
bit.
who are you?
Yes.
And B, how do you, Mr. Economist or politician or whoever you might be, how do you verify your information for accuracy, consistency, and reliability? Because I'll tell you, when I'm running the family, running the household, not running it, but arranging it. But when I'm in that household management, I know about the pitfalls, I know about the risks, I know about the opportunities. I know
Well,
them.
no one knows specific. It's individual for every unit
Yeah,
or family or
yeah,
household, as you're saying, and
mhm,
there's different complexities, and we all hold value
yeah,
different things
yeah,
differently,
yeah.
right?
But I think we need to be intellectually, emotionally, very honest with ourselves and frank with ourselves. We are the economist. Or
Yes.
you remember that, what was that um, store called? Toys R Us?
Toys R Us,
Yeah, well,
economists.
economists are us. We
I
are.
like.
So I just want to put that, first of all, on the table of understanding the true nature of economics. Then I think we want to look at this process by which we engage in trading values or exchanging values. The currency is only a medium of exchange. That's all it is.
Mhm.
So we've agreed that the Canadian dollar, the American dollar, the euro, whatever it is in your pocket, has not necessarily a value, but it has an acceptability to the other person in relation to the pound of apples or a kilogram of apples, if we're going to be correct. But
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, but that is your medium of exchange. The problem that we've got today is that the central values, the values of economics have been hijacked. They have become political. And one of the most dangerous things that we have engaged in is that the leaders today, the politicians, call them whatever you will, but they have found that they can put their hand in the cookie jar.
Mm.
That is a very dangerous place to be. If your children are putting their hands in the cookie jar, once you've got over the humor of the moment and so on, there's a point at which you say, no, keep your knuckles out of that.
Right.
Because you know that that cookie jar is not good for that individual all the time. The problem is that once the politician or the leader, the tribe leader, realizes that they can get their hands into the cookie jar, then they can start feeding us with things that are not good for us. That is why you as a mother and I as a father or a grandfather, grandmother, whatever your role might be, you're very aware of protecting the health of your children.
Mm-hmm.
That is a part that has been missed in this whole economic arrangement. Excuse me. It's become a phenomenon of you need it, I'll supply it. You feel entitled, I'll give you the answer. And we've been doing this over and over again. One of the things I have found, and I'm sure you will agree with me on this, I think every human being that I have ever met has in one shape or form cheated on a test. Ever,
Okay.
ever, 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 ever. Did you ever write the answer on the cuff of your shirt? No. Well, you didn't wear French cuffs, did you? Do that. I did. But what I'm trying to say is that when we, was it were, cheat, I'm use the word, I'm not being moral, I'm just saying, but when we end run our responsibility, is that okay? Okay.
That's
Does that pass the HR test?
yes.
Okay. So what I'm getting at is, though, you would say to me, and I will say to you, that when you, and we'll use the word cheat, when you cheat, you're not cheating the other person. You're not cheating the system. You're cheating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know, I mean, I realize this has got a sort of almost the image of Victorian Puritanism and all that stuff, but it is a truth that the happiest Jeremy I have ever known is the happy Jeremy who's done the work, has studied it, done whatever was necessary, brought it all together on a timely basis, and presents it as work done by Jeremy.
Right.
There's no higher calling than that I can come up with in terms of my human satisfaction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the problem is when you look around the world today and you see the issues of depression and loneliness, the silo effect that you've talked about, when you look at the way in which people feel overwhelmed and so on, all of these are in fact ways of working against that individuality. It is the most extraordinary thing that the world today has become so individual, and yet that individuality has been suffocated. I mean, it's an incredible conflict to
Mm-hmm.
say me, 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 and yet at the same time, not allow me to express myself in
Right.
terms of my own hard work, not hard work, but in terms of my own successes and my own studying and so on. If you talk to successful people, they've always done, you know, they've done their preparation. What
Mm-hmm.
did Lord Baden-Powell say for the Boy Scouts? What was the expression? It's in Latin. Come on, come on. It's in Latin.
Boy Scouts.
No, he did not say Boy Scout. He said,
No, I know that, but I'm saying Boy Scout.
yeah, no, his great expression was semper paratus, always be prepared.
Oh, I know. Always be prepared.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a great, and that was the Latin version of it. But I know.
We know you're the Latin guru.
Well, I don't know if I'd call myself a guru. It seems to come out at the wrong times, that's all. But anyway, point I'm getting to is that economics today has become a suffocating kind of exercise, that it has not allowed individual self determination to be able to come to the table in the way for which we have been created as human beings.
How can we
Not,
change?
sorry?
How can we change that?
Well, first of all, as we've consistently said in Respectonomics, there's two things that go hand in hand. It's like a railway track. One of them is an awareness. So that when we are told that, the economist is speaking tomorrow and he'll be addressing or she'll be addressing, I think you need to go to that with a very, very cynical position. Let me give you an example of this. That is Peter, and I've lost his last name, but Peter used to run the Magellan Fund for Fidelity, which was one of the Peter Lynch, one of the most successful asset management, portfolio management practices in the world, extremely successful. And he had an extraordinary line once. He said, if you can find the brightest economist that you can find, Nobel Prize, the whole 9 yards, and sit down with that individual for 15 minutes, you will have wasted 15 minutes of your life.
Hmm. And why was that?
Because the economist is trying to bring together things that you and I, in a household sense, we know how difficult it is to manage a household. How can somebody honestly say, well, if you can't manage your household, I can manage your nation hold? That doesn't make sense. So
Right.
in other words, Peter was just making a very reasonable point. They don't add up. You put 5 economists in a room. How come you end up with 4 opinions? How come when a Nobel Prize comes out for economics and it always says, and we repudiated the findings of 1920 or 1930? Look at Keynesian economics. Keynesian economics said quite justifiably that you borrowed the money in the bad times and you paid it back in the good times. Perfectly reasonable philosophy. Household management 101.
Right.
What's wrong with that? Except that what Keynes didn't tell you was, and by the way, you should spend more money on social services and so on, and expand the role of government so that it becomes a bigger component of your national economy. The problem with government spending is that, or government life really, is when the government becomes bigger than the private sector, we fall backwards, which is why our standard of living has effectively been deteriorating. Because if the government is bigger than the private sector, then we don't have the output that is necessary to provide for that government. It's an equation. It's not
Right.
complicated. Be no different again. Go back to household management. If you kept going to advisors and counselors instead of going out there with a spade and digging up your garden, it wouldn't take long before you'd find out that your garden wasn't growing anything.
Right.
This is a do it kind of formula. So that's one thing. The awareness is number one. And I think we need to, the politicians have realized that by having their finger in this cookie jar, I don't know if you figured it out, but the cookie jar is the central bank. If you can put your hand in the central bank and every time you write a check, it works, how long does it take you as a political leader to go, yum, yum, I'm going to write more checks?
Right.
That way I win. You are not winning in the sense of serving the common good. That is an absolute point of clarity. And I'm not being a capitalist. I'm not being conservative or a fascist or anything like that. I'm literally saying that the human entity, the human being, is so capable of coming up with so many innovative and creative ideas. And really, I mean, you talk to your children. Are you not amazed by what they come up with?
Mm-hmm.
When I go into my favorite example, I've said to you over and again, I go into the local bakery and I find opinions there that absolutely knock me sideways of brilliance right at the front counter.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is the economic overlay today is one of suppression and repression. And I think it's leading to the silo effect that you talk about. I think it's leading to people feeling that they can't get out and be themselves. It's almost like being a lie. You're living a lie because you're not actually able to be yourself.
Right.
That's a terrible indictment or conviction. So that's one thing. And the second part is this. And I know we beat up on this all the time. But if we don't have the respect for the other human being, we actually blow apart every principle of economics. In your own family, when somebody fails to respect the other person,
Mm-hmm.
the deterioration that results from that, the disruption it creates, the pain and the suffering is unbelievable. We all know that. It can be, I mean, anybody can talk about difficult marriages. They can talk about children that have become separated from themselves. I mean, all of these kinds of things. They
Can
are
be,
hot. Sorry?
it can be debilitating.
It is in every sense. And then you start losing, confidence in yourself. So that what I'm pointing to is the word respectonomics has an enormous intrinsic value. It means that the economy works on the basis of respecting one another. The currency for respect is dignity. So that when in fact we exchange values, you and I exchange values with each other all the time. And interestingly, as you and other members of the Dignity Trust of the team will tell us, we do not always agree with each other.
Correct.
That means that we've got different values. What could be more beautiful, ecologically speaking, than bringing those different values to the table? That's where we get growth. That's where we get opportunity.
An opportunity to learn and to
Absolutely.
understand and to understand and to have compassion for different perspectives and
Right.
why people have those different
Yeah.
perspectives.
Yeah. So I know we started off on the subject of economics, and I think most people thought we might be talking about GNP and balance of payments. I want everybody to be their own household economist because that's what they are, and to use the common sense that comes with that. You as a human being, as a manager of a household, you do not say, oh, my house is worth more money, therefore I am going to go out and borrow more money. I'm not saying you wouldn't go out and borrow money, but the equation of the value of the house entitling you to more debt is not a good idea.
Right.
And in your wildest dreams, we've all had debts or have debts in one shape or form. By the way, the debt might not be financial, it could be, but it can also be a debt to who's gone before us. I look at my history and think of the people that have, created where I am today. I owe them a debt, surely. So in other words, though, debt can be totally manageable, but we should be very careful that we create the debt for reasons that we know are appropriate.
Right.
And like everything in life, there are times when we'll look in the mirror and say, oh, drat, I should not have done that. That's actually poetic, isn't it? Oh, drat,
It
I
is.
shouldn't have done that.
It is. And then it's in those moments where you can pause and have the opportunity to think about how is it that I move forward.
Yeah. And that's exactly where we are. Respectonomics is very much respecting the other human being, but it's a perspective exercise. It's one that's always looking ahead. And I can't think of a finer way to move ahead than to rekindling the dignity and the respect that one human being has for another. I
Absolutely.
rest my case.
Fantastic. And if individuals, families, units, households, communities, groups would like to discuss this topic further or learn more about this topic, where can they connect with us?
We suggest you go to Respectonomics, what do you call it? What's that called now? I lost my train of thought for a moment. The
The
what?
website. The
Website.
website.
That's right. Yes. The spider web. Yeah. So, no, the Respectonomics website, um, jeremy@respectonomics.com. But what I cannot overstate is that we need these thoughts and ideas to be rooted around. I want to make one point. It sounds a bit strange to say, I can be your speaker, but I'll make one comment that goes with that. I like to leave Jeremy at the door. And therefore, that the people are only hearing this voice of respectonomics, which is a voice that has been compounded by all the inputs we've had from the Dignity Trust and from our other partners.
Fantastic.
Now I rest my case.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah.